Good day, my brothers and my sisters. This is your brother, William Holmes, coming again to bring another reading. We're going to look at this one as part or episode number 7. But let us just go back into episode 6 since it's been a little bit of time since, excuse me, and since I've done a reading in this book. Now, the book, let me remind you what it is. The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And the subtitle is Mass Incarceration in an Age or in the Age of Color Blindness. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing a lot of talking about other things. I want to get right into the reading. Again, let us go back over some of what was read before. I'll start, I'm on page 10, in the first paragraph of page 10. And it's talking about the letter that was sent to Congress. The letter explained that its forthcoming report would show how each representative and senator cast his or her vote on some of the most important civil rights issues of 2007. This includes voting rights, affirmative action, immigration, nominations, education, hate crimes, employment, health, housing, and poverty. Criminal justice issues did not make the list. I say again, criminal justice issues did not make the list. Remember, subtitle to this book is called Mass Incarceration in the Age of Color Blindness. Criminal justice issues did not make the list. That same broad-based coalition organized a major conference in October 2007 entitled Why We Can't Wait, Reversing the Retreat on Civil Rights, which included panels discussing, now these panels of this major conference in 2007, this panel, what was included in this panel's discussion was school integration, employment discrimination, all valid points, all valid points to discuss. School integration, employment discrimination, housing and lending discrimination, economic justice, environmental justice, disability rights, age discrimination, and immigrants' rights. Yet not a single panel was devoted to criminal justice reform. And we know that the criminal justice needs a heavy overhaul reform. Now we're going to go ahead into the next couple of pages. Let's see. Okay, it goes up to page 19. I'm not sure if we're going to finish up to page 19. Maybe we will. But right now we're still on page 10 and we're in the second paragraph on page 10. The elected leaders of the African American community have a much broader mandate than civil rights groups. But they too frequently overlook criminal justice. In January 2009, for example, the Congressional Black Caucus sent a letter to hundreds of community and organization leaders who have worked with the caucus over the years, soliciting general information about them and requesting that they identify their priorities. More than 35 topics were listed as areas of potential special interest, including taxes, defense, immigration, agriculture, housing, banking, higher education, multimedia, transportation, and infrastructure, women, seniors, nutrition, faith initiatives, civil rights, census, economic security, and emerging leaders. But hear this, no mention was made of criminal justice. Reentry was listed, but a community leader who was interested in criminal justice reform had to check the box labeled other. I say again, reentry, meaning reentry from the correctional facilities back into society. Reentry was listed, but it was listed only because the community leader who was interested in criminal justice reform had to check the box labeled other. This is not to say that important criminal justice reform work has not been done. Civil rights advocates have organized vigorous challenges to specific aspects of the new caste system. One notable example is the successful challenge led by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund to a racist drug sting operation in Tulia, Texas. You can look that up, put it in your YouTube search, Google search. You'll hear about the Tulia, Texas drug sting operation. The 1999 drug bust incarcerated almost 15% of the black population of that town, based on the uncorroborated false testimony of a single informant hired by the sheriff of Tulia. More recently, civil rights groups around the country have helped to launch legal attacks and vibrant grassroots campaigns against felon disenfranchisement laws and have strenuously opposed discriminatory crack sentencing laws and guidelines, as well as zero tolerance policies that effectively funnel youth of color from schools to jails. The National ACLU recently developed a racial justice program that includes criminal justice issues among its core priorities and has created a promising drug law reform project. And thanks to the aggressive advocacy of the ACLU, the NAACP, and other civil rights organizations around the country, racial profiling is widely condemned, even by members of law enforcement who once openly embraced the practice. I say again, and thanks to the aggressive advocacy of the ACLU, the NAACP, and other civil rights organizations around the country, racial profiling is widely condemned, even by members of law enforcement who once openly embraced the practice. We're on page 11, second paragraph. Still, despite these significant developments, there seems to be a lack of appreciation for the enormity of the crisis at hand. There is no broad-based movement brewing to end mass incarceration and no advocacy effort that approaches in scale the fight to preserve affirmative action. There also remains a persistent tendency in the civil rights community to treat the criminal justice system as just another institution infected with lingering racial bias. The NAACP's website offers one example. As recently as May 2008, now remember this book was written in 2010. As recently as May 2008, and I'm sure we can find examples of this very thing I'm about to read right now. We'll be able to find it recent. Let's read. As recently as May 2008, one could find a brief introduction to the organization's criminal justice work in the section entitled Legal Department. The introduction explained that despite the civil rights victories of our past, racial prejudice still pervades the criminal justice system. Visitors to the website were urged to join the NAACP in order to protect the hard-earned civil rights gains of the past 3 decades. No one visiting the website would learn that the mass incarceration of African Americans had already eviscerated many of the hard-earned gains it urged its members to protect. Imagine if civil rights organizations and African American leaders in the 1940s had not placed Jim Crow segregation at the forefront of their racial justice agenda. It would have seemed absurd, given that racial segregation was the primary vehicle of racialized social control in the United States. During that period, this book argues that mass incarceration is metaphorically the new Jim Crow, and that all those who care about social justice should fully commit themselves to dismantling this new racial caste system. Mass incarceration, not a tax on affirmative action or lax civil rights enforcement, is the most damaging manifestation of the backlash against the civil rights movement. The popular narrative that emphasizes the death of slavery and Jim Crow and celebrates the nation's triumph over race with the election of Barack Obama is dangerously misguided. The colorblind public consensus that prevails in America today, i.e., the widespread belief that race no longer matters, has blinded us to the realities of race in our society and facilitated the emergence of a new caste system. Clearly, much has changed in my thinking about the criminal justice system since I passed that bright orange poster stapled to a telephone pole 10 years ago. For me, the new caste system is now as obvious as my own face in the mirror, like an optical illusion, one in which the embedded image is impossible to see until its outline is identified. The new caste system lurks invisibly within the maze of rationalizations we have developed for persistent racial inequality. It is possible, quite easy, in fact, never to see the embedded reality. Only after years of working on criminal justice reform did my own focus finally shift, and then the rigid caste system slowly came into view. Eventually, it became obvious. Now it seems odd that I could not see it before. Again, this is Michelle Alexander writing this, who spoke this, who is speaking this, who is the author of this book. Knowing, as I do, the difficulty of seeing what most everyone insists does not exist, I anticipate that this book will be met with skepticism or something worse. For some, the characterization of mass incarceration as a racial caste system may seem like a gross exaggeration, if not hyperbole. Yes, we may have classes in the United States, vaguely defined upper, middle, and lower classes. And we may even have an underclass, a group so estranged from mainstream society that it is no longer in reach of the mythical ladder of opportunity. But we do not, many will insist, have anything in this country that resembles a caste. That's what some would insist. The aim of this book is not to venture into the long-running, vigorous debate in the scholarly literature regarding what does and does not constitute a caste system. I use the term racial caste, she says, in this book the way it is used in common parlance to denote a stigmatized racial group locked into an inferior position by law and custom. Jim Crow and slavery were caste systems. So is our current system of mass incarceration. Let us pause here. To be continued.